name is Doug, and I'm a member of the Capital City A's Club here in Austin, Texas. It's a Model A Club, which is a chapter of the National Model A Ford Club of America, or MAFCA. Today, I'm going to show you how to access and replace a water pump in a Model A Ford. We'll begin the process by removing the hood. This is actually probably the most difficult part of the whole project because it takes more than one person to remove a Model A Ford hood unless you happen to have a contraption rig where you can maybe hoist it up, but it's much easier if you can find a friend to help you or a family member to remove the hood. So let's begin. The first part of removing the hood on a Ford Model A is there's two screws here, and this is the end of the hood that's closest to the gas tank. So you'll see one screw there, and there's another one on the other side of the hinge. And basically you unscrew those, and then you lift that part out, and the front part of the hood, that part here where the hinge goes into a slot right next to the radiator cap, that will slide right out. Now, to unscrew these screws here, you will not only need a screwdriver on the top or outside of the car, but you will also need to get underneath the dash of the Model A, inside the cab, and you will possibly need to have somebody turn the screwdriver on the outside while you hold the nut, the fastening nut on the inside. Once you've finished unscrewing and taking the nuts off the inside, to remove the hood, you just pull these out. You can take it out with your finger, and this slides back. And so this piece comes off, and now the next part is we are going to take the hood off. This part here will slide out, and then you'll see my son and I are going to take the hood off and put it down on the ground. Okay, let's take off the hood. Slowly. Slide this out. Oh, lift it back up. Okay. There you go. Now walk around. Put it on this side. There, that was easy. Okay, the next step is to drain the water from your Model A radiator. This could have been your first step, but you have to eventually drain the water before you start taking apart the hoses and the clamps. So on this pipe, there is a little valve under here that you unscrew, and before you do that, hopefully you have side skirts on your Model A. If not, you'd put a bucket directly under here, but at the end of the skirt there, you'll see down there is a bucket. I will also show you it this way. So that is the bucket that will catch the water. You only need about 3-gallon capacity. You don't need a big bucket to catch it. And then all you do is unscrew this here. You will see the water come out. Also, to help it drain, what you can do is the radiator cap. You can loosen that or take it off. And now that'll take a little while to drain, so just don't be in a rush. Let the water, we'll come back and check in a few hours, maybe tomorrow. And before you walk away, make sure you check the water that it's actually going in the bucket, which it is, okay. Otherwise, you could come back and find your whole floor of your garage with water and you wouldn't want that. Okay, the next step after removing the hood, so make sure you have the hood placed nice and safe. You can stand it up vertically. I have it on a piece of cardboard there so it won't scratch. To get to the water pump, so the water pump is right here. We have to remove some things that are pretty easy first. These two rods that help hold the hood up and keep the radiator in place. We'll have to unscrew those on both ends and remove those. We will also have to take off the rubber hose here, so we will undo these hose clamps and take this piece out. We also have to, there is a fan belt here, and to loosen and take off the fan belt so we can get the water pump out, we're going to have to do a few things. One is underneath. Now this is an alternator. Your Model A may have a generator, which is what came from the manufacturer. They do make aftermarket alternators. This is a 6-volt one that works with your existing system. But no matter what you do under here, I don't know if I can get to it or not, but right there, that bolt, you basically have to you have to loosen this bolt that goes through so you can tilt this generator, or if you have an alternator, tilt it. And then with my model, there's this extra add-on bracket here. So with my Model A, it's not quite 100% stock. There's this bracket, which is basically a metal piece which holds, if you have an alternator in place, keeps it from moving so you don't get slack in the fan belt. But that is probably more complicated than I made it out to be. It's very simple to loosen the necessary bolts and take the belt off. So that is what we're going to do next, and then we'll pick up from there. Okay, once you remove the hood rods and the fan belt, and what else did I take off? And loosen the hose clamps. So once you loosen these, you can now take the hose off, pull it out from the radiator and the outtake here. If you have an old hose, you may need to cut it off. So my hose is relatively new. I might try to reuse it, but there's nothing wrong with taking a razor blade or some kind of sharp knife. You can. This rubber is very easy to cut. You can just cut it and peel it off. That's one way to get it off. If it's been there many years, it'll just be very difficult to remove. Another thing you might want to do is, let's see if I can bring around here. We're going to try to tilt this radiator shell back to take the hose off. I worked it loose a little bit. You might want to, in the front here, have a towel on this cross rod here in front of the radiator. When this pulls back, it'll keep it from scratching. So just a little something to protect that as we're working to do that. Put this back. Alright, so let's see how easy this comes off. So what I'm going to do is, these are loosened already, so I'm going to slowly pull this forward. Okay, so the top is out. Once I got one end out, it's pretty easy to take the other end. Usually you just twist or... it's going to come. Now the trick to this is that when you put it on in the first place, you put some lubricant on those ends, so later on when you take it off, it's easy to come out. And this should just... Alright. It's coming. Just being a little difficult. Let me take this hose clamp off. Put that there. Okay, there we go. So next we're going to take the water pump off. So I'm going to loosen these 4 bolts or heads here, and this has a gasket here, so we have to pry that off. So we will try that shortly next. Okay, since the last video, I now have, let's see, I've removed the bolts on the water pump. You'll notice the bolts are exposed there. So I took the 4 nuts off. This is an original style mount on the water pump, meaning let me show you. There are 4 bolts that come out, and basically there's a nut here. It's like a 9/16 size, and they screw on. There is a option you can get for a Model A Ford water pump where you can pull those out and you get tapped bolts, which you then screw into the block for the water pump. The advantage for that is when you take the water pump off, you've got more room. You can take it off without trying to slide it off, because the challenge, as you can see here, you may notice there is cardboard that is in front of the cooling fan, the radiator fan. And that's because I'm going to, I probably won't film this part because it could be challenging. I'll see if I can do it without taking the radiator out. But the idea is I'll tilt the radiator forward. This cardboard will protect the cooling fins, and I'll basically try to work this off without stripping the bolts. And also, this is there's a gasket seal on here, so I have to break the gasket seal as well. So it'll be a bit involved. I'll try to work on it a bit between videotapings. If it goes well, we'll go on to the next step. If it doesn't go so well, you may get to see me pull out the radiator shell, which I don't look forward to. But actually, what I could do is I can remove the cotter pin, and I could take the fan off. And then that would be an easier way. I may do that. So we'll see how much space I have to work. But if the pump doesn't come off easy due to lack of space, I may take the fan off first, and maybe the pump will come off easier then. So let's find out. As I'm removing the water pump, it's worth noting the pump is going to be sealed on your block with a gasket. It could be a very old seal. Mine was sealed very well. So to remove the pump off the block and slide it off the 4 bolts, you're going to have to work it loose. You can't work it with your hands. You're going to have to use what I'm using, and it seems to be working well so far, is I have a chisel. So I don't know the size of this. It says it's a 1 3/4 Mason chisel, but I think the important thing to note is it needs to be sharp. So if yours isn't sharp on the end, you should sharpen it. And the other thing that makes a difference is the hammer size. I started using a ball peen hammer at first, which is a smaller hammer. I was thinking I didn't want too much weight to potentially damage it, but I was noticing this wasn't getting the job done. It doesn't have enough force to pry it off. So I got a regular hammer. So this is a much bigger hammer, and it's coming off very well. So let me show you the progress I've made. What I'm doing is going around the sides, and basically where the gasket sits, I'm trying to fit the wedge right in there on top of the gasket. You're going to ruin the gasket when you take it off anyway, so don't worry about trying to preserve it. So position that sharp edge of the chisel right in there, and then with your heavy hammer, you just tap it. And you just keep, pieces of the gasket will start to fall off like this, which is fine. You probably can't see it on the video, but you can see daylight. When it starts coming off, which is good, you'll see a little crack of light, or you'll see some space. And you just keep working around the pump, and you keep doing that. Be a little patient, but it'll eventually work its way off the blocks. So that's worth noting if you're doing this project at home. Okay, loosening the water pump, prying it off from the gasket seal went pretty well. Basically, I was able to go on the driver's side and passenger side and keep working it little by little. I didn't have to go much top or bottom, just really side to side. It's also worth noting the width of your chisel. Check the width between the bolts. This just happens to fit nicely in between there and it doesn't hit the bolts. If you had a really wide chisel, if your chisel's really wide, then you'd have to basically work it at a quarter angle because you don't want to chisel through the bolts. That would be bad. But this one fits right in between the top and bottom bolt, and I was able to pry it off. So what I'm going to do now, this next step, and this is not rehearsed, I'm going to try to pry off the water pump with the fan blade on the pump. It's worth noting if you have a 2-blade fan or a 4-blade fan for a Model A, from the manufacturer, a stock Model A will have a 2-blade fan. One of the reasons it's designed with a 2-blade fan, you'll find out, is it makes it easier to remove the water pump without having to take the radiator out. I've seen aftermarket, actually when I first got this Model A, it had a 4-blade radiator. I had it replaced. Supposedly, I don't know the merits if a 4-blade cools more than a 2-blade, but one thing I can tell you is the 4-blade, you don't have the angle to work it off to take it out so easily. So that's one of the drawbacks of a 4-blade fan for a Model A is when it comes time to ever take your water pump off, you got to remove the whole shell and radiator, which is more work. And it's not how it was originally manufactured anyway, so you want to keep your Model A hopefully as original as possible. Anyway, I have not rehearsed this part. I don't know how well it will go. I'm only going to spend a few seconds on it. If it doesn't come off easy, I'm going to stop the video and then pick it up later. So what I'm going to try to do, so I have the cardboard here to protect the fins. So what I'm going to try to do is lean this forward at the same time, work the pump off. Close, close. Let's try this again. Oh, so I got it out, but there's the impeller, so you can't see it in the video, but a little bit of rust there. So there's it doesn't stop here. There's a section that goes inside, so I have to try to pry that out too. Oh, it's gonna come, I think. Oh, maybe. Wait. Hey, look at that. First time on video. So, this is what it looks like on the inside of your Model A after many years. It's not in bad shape, a little bit of rust, but I'll probably just sand that off. And by the way, you'll need to scrape off all of this old gasket and sand it on both sides and make it for a smooth connection when you put it back on. And what I'll probably do as well is, in addition to sand it, I'll probably do some spot paint around here. So this is probably the only time you get to spot paint some areas in your Model A that normally you can't get to. So anyway, you can see this is probably the biggest part right here to remove. So I think the hard work of this project is mostly done. Once I get some work done on this, I'll reverse the steps and show you how to put this back in.